And good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming back for another episode of Opportunity Makers. I'm, as always, super excited about my guest this morning. Before I introduce Annie, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge our First Peoples, the people who have been and continue to be the keepers and caretakers of this beautiful land, and in particular, the land I live in, which is Muskoka and Gravenhurst within Muskoka. I want to honor the Chippewas of Rama, the Wada Mohawk First Nations, and the Moon River Métis and Inuit. This is just a small part of honoring Indigenous history and culture and in the service and promise toward reconciliation. So thank you for allowing me to do that. And as I said, I'm super excited about my guest this morning, Annie Kip. Annie, I met just a very short time ago. I actually purchased the thing that we're going to be talking about this morning, her smart cards. And Annie is a coach and a great innovator and a real opportunity maker. So instead of talking about her, I want to bring her into the studio. Hi, Annie.
Hey, Libby. Thanks for having me. This is great.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you. We had a chat when I was away down south, I guess last month, and I purchased your smart cards. I actually have 3 decks of these that I bought for, what I thought was going to be for some brainstorming sessions, strategy sessions that I might do with some of my clients. And of course, I started using them myself. So Annie, I really want to hear your story. So you are a coach, and have been a practicing coach for some time. And then somewhere along the way, you got an idea and took it through to creation. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So I'm a business coach and I work with business owners who have been in business for a few years and are sort of deciding what to do next. Sometimes they need to set how they're running their business. Sometimes they just need a new perspective, and that's a growth period. So I do a particular kind of coaching when needed to help people break out of a stuck perspective. And I was realizing that some people are not visual. I'm a pretty visual person, and so it's not hard for me to imagine images, but that's not true for everybody, apparently. And so I needed something that I could give them that would help break them out of that and give them something tangible to actually look at. And this idea just started coming together from this way of coaching. And then I started, because I'm also a creative person, I started working on creating the images, and this idea of creating images that would spark something new in your brain came up. And then I combined this with these questions that are not typical questions. They're sort of open, powerful questions that really challenge your brain. So the idea is to give your brain new inputs, because your brain's job is to make sense of things, and then give your brain some questions to focus on to give you some new insights and some new perspectives on yourself. So
well, and you've definitely done that. I'm just looking over here at my other screen to see if there are any comments. And if there are, please put them in questions, comments as we go along. Put them in the chat, and I will be sure to kind of look over to the side here and answer those as they come in. So let's just show people what this is. So I've held it up. I'm holding it up again. These are the smart cards. Creative images and powerful questions, a fun way to activate your creative thinking, unlock your inner wisdom, find new perspectives, and get unstuck. And on the back side, you talk about, just using it individually. And using it for self-coaching. But also, talking with friends, having more interesting conversations. And then, of course, one of the initial reasons that I bought them was this idea of, when you're brainstorming a new strategy. And but this is the interesting thing, Annie. I'm familiar with cards. And I thought it was great that you did this, and I'm always looking for, new materials and new things that I can use for myself and in my own business.
Mhm.
But boy, so there's instructions,
Mhm.
right? You get your deck, and
Yeah.
it says you've got two types of cards. You've got your image cards
Mhm.
and your question cards,
Mhm.
color coded, gray
Mhm.
and yellow.
Mhm.
And so my husband and I are on the patio down south. It's like, let's pick an image. And this is the image that I pick. And I'm like, oh, a Ferris wheel. What? There's like a toad
Mhm.
in the middle of the Ferris wheel. That totally, totally threw me. So talk a little bit about the images and how you came to create these these just sort of really open up your brain and
Yeah.
knock you off your socks kind of images.
Yeah. They're meant to. They're meant to be dissonant. They're meant to be a challenge for your brain. Our brain is so in the habit of categorizing information for us because we have so many inputs, right? That it has to have sort of rules that it uses to categorize information. So by putting these elements together in the cards that don't match, that literally bring up sort of an emotional reaction, some of the cards are uncomfortable, in fact, and
Mhm.
you don't know what to make of them. And you know, I pick the cards at different times, and I'll see different things in the images. Even though I made them, I will pick up on different parts of the image depending on what's going on for me. So they're not typical images. They're not meant to be just beautiful and inspiring. They're meant to challenge your brain
Mhm.
to dig deeper into your well of resources to help you access the information that you have inside of you that is useful for you in this moment. So if, for instance, if you were working on a problem and you drew that card, I would encourage you to look at each individual piece of that and see what your associations are, see what sort of emotions are brought up. Do you feel repulsed? Do you feel attracted to it? What are the things in there that affect you? And then dig deeper into what does that mean for you?
Right.
So, yeah.
So let's put this into action.
Yeah.
Let's pick a problem. I have many. I'm always an opportunity for getting unstuck in some fashion.
Yeah.
Let me pick something that probably most people who are on this session this morning, whether you're live or watching on the replay, can relate to.
Yeah.
And so mine would be, feeling like I continuously get caught in the muck of things, and I'm not spending enough time on my big picture.
Yeah. So being in your business, not working on your business, is that
Yeah.
okay? So then maybe even refining that further into what would it feel like or look like to be working on your big picture, or even like what's in the way of it, sort of thinking specifically about what do I need to know about what it will take for me to work on my big picture.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so if this is something that is relating to you,
Yeah.
I invite you to jot some notes down and, figure this out for yourself. I'm going to kind of be the sample, and
Yeah.
probably most of you are going to say, just be quiet so I can figure this out. But I'm not going to be quiet because that would be kind of a dull show.
Mhm.
So, okay. So what is getting in the way? Now, would I be relating this already to the image that I'm picking, or?
So the way I've seen it work best is that you kind of get really clear on your dilemma, your issue, your challenge, and then you just set it aside for a second.
Okay.
Don't, because people tend to make meaning out of the image, and what I really want you to do is just immerse yourself in that image.
Right.
You can do that in many ways. You can just look at these things and make note of your associations. You can also insert yourself into the image and see how it feels to be in the image.
Mm-hmm.
So what feels right to you in this moment? Can maybe even just articulate what you're seeing and what it's bringing, like what it's reminding you of.
So it's fascinating because I'm talking about and we very briefly before we got on the session live this morning talked about the fact that I try to think of something. And so it's funny that my issue is this being in the muck.
Yeah.
Like that is the Ferris wheel for
Okay.
me. I can spend a lot of time going around and around and around
Yeah.
and not really getting anywhere.
Yeah.
Something that the first time I saw this card, I didn't notice. I noticed it this morning, maybe because it's blown up a little bit on my screen, is that one of the seats has people in it, but they look like they're sort of in hoodies or something. It's very dark.
Yeah.
And that's probably that stupid little voice
Mm.
that is saying, if you just hold on to the railing, you'll get through, you're fine.
Mhm.
Being on a Ferris wheel is maybe a little bit risky as it goes up
Mhm.
and over. I don't like
Mhm.
heights.
Mhm.
But there's that, little voice somewhere
Yeah.
that is maybe preventing you from
Yeah.
doing anything.
Yeah.
And
And before you associate it with your problem too much,
yeah.
just be in that image. So
Mm.
keep talking about what it's like to be on a Ferris wheel for you.
I really hate them.
Oh,
I
okay.
really I do not like the over the top part
Yeah.
of a Ferris wheel,
Okay.
and, I have this weird thing about heights where I'm really revealing myself this morning, aren't I?
I mean, this
Where
is
I
what it's
feel like
about.
where I wanna jump if I'm too close to a ledge, and so
Yeah.
Ferris wheels sort of amplify that,
Yeah. Yeah. So
push you over the edge.
that's a really juicy moment to dive into. What is it like for you when you have that feeling of like, I'm so high up, I could jump. Like I could. Like, what is that like inside for you?
Oh, terrifying.
Terrifying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. And
terrifying.
then let's go further. What else do you see in the card? What
Yeah.
other things catch your eye?
Well, I mean, the big thing that catches my eye is the frog or the toad.
Yeah.
And she, I don't know if frogs have gender, but the frog
Yeah.
is looking quite curious,
Okay. Yeah.
sort
And
of
it's
like oblivious to whatever is going on in the background
okay.
and kind of a what's up kind of face.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's
And
up? What's happening?
yeah. And if you were the frog, what would you be thinking is happening?
I'd probably be ignoring the Ferris wheel like the frog seems to be doing,
Okay.
and I would be fully in the fun of like, "Hey, what's up?
I'm a frog.
I'm a frog. What's up? Where's my
Yeah.
next meal?"
Yeah. So what's the contrast between the feeling of being on the Ferris wheel and the feeling of being a frog?
Hmm. So the Ferris wheel, although it I suppose to some, or the intention of a Ferris wheel is to have this sense of freedom and lightness and
Yeah.
flying and all of those kinds of connotations um, that I don't get for me.
Yeah.
I it's really the contrast is way more fun to be a frog.
Yeah. Okay.
And by the way, frogs still leap.
Okay. Talk about that.
Well, frogs take big strides.
They make big jumps.
They
They can
make
just
big
sit
jumps.
there and then all of a sudden, boom, they're
Yeah.
jumping.
And sort of out of surprise
Uh-huh.
sometimes, right?
Yeah.
They see the fly that,
Yeah.
that we don't necessarily realize is there, and they just kind of
Yeah.
wait and then
Yeah. So
hit their
they're
target and, make the next jump and move on.
yeah. So what's it take to be a frog?
Never thought I liked frogs before this call.
I mean, this is what's so cool about these cards. You just go
Oh my
anywhere.
goodness. Is anybody else thinking that we're crazy on this comment a big yes if you think we're nuts. Or at least I'm nuts.
We're gonna get somewhere. I
Okay.
assure you, this is
All right.
going somewhere. It may sound rambling, and that's what's so beautiful is that your brain right now is making sense of things, is like synthesizing this crazy information.
Right.
So it, people want, like, it's the fastest way to get to clarity when you are willing to be in the muck of it. I mean,
Yes.
similar to business, I guess. It's so, yeah,
Yeah. So what does it mean to be the frog is really the freedom in this picture.
yeah.
Yeah.
You associate it with freedom.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Oddly. Yes, I do.
And what is the, just one last question before we go to the question card. What does the frog have to believe to be good at being a frog?
Not a lot.
Okay.
Just that, it's going to turn out. They don't sit around worrying about somebody stepping on them or,
Yeah. They're a frog. They can
it's
do
like
their
they're a
thing.
frog. They're not really too caught up in worst case scenarios.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
they're,
they're forward thinking, future thinking.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So that's the frog perspective. Okay, cool. So now, if you feel complete enough, like, you can dive deeper if you want, but for the purposes,
For the
now
sake of everyone watching, we'll
yeah,
move on.
yeah.
So
Let's
now
set
we move on
aside,
to a question.
yeah, let's just, in a way, set aside that image now and just focus on the question and trust that your brain has now gotten all this new information.
Okay. All right. So the question, so you sent me a couple that I could post. So I will do this one. That's probably cheating a little bit because I know what both of the questions are. So what would a full yes look like?
Okay.
What holds you back from a full yes? How will you recognize a full yes? What does a full yes
Yeah.
open up? It's a fantastic question.
Yeah. So throw yourself into that first question first fully and the others after. So what does a full yes look like for you getting out of the muck?
Oh, it just means having fun, putting my time into what could be next.
Yeah.
And so often that is a very untraditional kind of view for me in the sense that it is about getting out of my office, right? The traditional place where,
Yeah.
you think you have to work
Right.
and stepping into the fun and delight of what's next.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. So
Yeah.
it's like throwing yourself into it and not letting yourself be in that Ferris wheel, not being in the muck, just forcing yourself to go toward what you really love.
Yeah.
And what's exciting and fun.
Yeah.
And there's a vulnerability to doing that, as we know, right? Like, we feel like the safe thing is to buckle down and do our hard work and like earn by being miserable. But you're saying you can choose to have fun, and that's actually the answer.
Yes.
I love
And
it.
it's interesting. I read many of you on the call would know that I am a fan of Price Pritchett and U Squared. And this morning I read their 2-page chapter every morning. This morning's was choose a different set of risks.
Oh,
Ask yourself what you're risking if you do not go for the quantum leap. The risk is that you won't get what you really want out of
oh my
life.
gosh.
And he goes on to talk about the fact that you can't ever escape risk. You can only decide which risks to take.
Beautiful.
And so this is all things coming together.
They do.
Yeah.
And I find this in the workshop. I do a free workshop once a month, usually, for people who've bought Spark cards, and we just get together and work to set some intentions. But this happens more often than you might expect, where things just synthesize, things just sort of fall into place. The other information that they're consuming somehow now makes even more sense. So I mean, I just owe it to our brains. Are amazing, or they're amazing at taking care of us and giving us what we need. And we're just using this tool to kind of bring it out.
And so let's talk for a moment because, so first of all, thank you, Annie. You are offering a discount
Oh yeah.
this morning and I'll post this again after we're done here, using the code. So going to your website, I'll show that at the end, anniekip.com.
Yeah.
And going to the smart cards, if you put in the coupon code Libby20, you get a discount for buying the smart deck. So, or smart card. So, you know, absolutely do that and then take advantage. I don't think I've been able to take advantage so far of the monthly session, but I absolutely will.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to get yourself started. But you also use this when you're doing strategy work.
Yeah.
Right. So this experience was very personal, and you know, this is you know, something that hopefully many of you can relate to, which is getting stuck in the muck instead of working on the big and important things. But how would you use these? Maybe that's a big question for the time we have left, but how would you use these in a strategy session? There's a lot of corporate folks who tune into this who might be responsible for or participating in business planning strategy sessions at work.
I mean, I think one of the biggest valuable takeaways from using these cards is opening up your brain to other possibilities. We get so stuck in our safe ways of thinking and habitual plans and thoughts, and also conditioning that we're not aware of, that really keep us sort of where we are. And, you know, the synthesizing new information to create something new. So as far as strategy goes, I think this is a great tool for incorporating a lot of different perspectives. So if you were to use one card and ask each person to privately come up with their own experience of this and their own thoughts, you're going to get vastly different responses that you wouldn't get otherwise, that are really hard to just pull out of the air. But if you give somebody a tool and ask them to work with it in the way that we just did, you're going to get so many different voices. You're going to act, you know, we want diversity of thought, diversity of people. And this is a real way of mining all that resources that you have on your team and in your company and on all levels. So using it to get at the resources that you do have for ideas and new pathways.
Which is one of the reasons why I bought 3 decks. To use at tables when I'm doing business planning strategy sessions. You just said something so interesting, which is diversity of thought. You know, and all of the diversity and inclusion conversations that we're having, and they are important conversations to have and important considerations to make. Diversity of thinking is sometimes still standing in the way. That we, you know, we hire people who think like us instead of hiring people who think differently from us. And when you're in business planning, and I've been there many, many times at the table, not, you know, facilitating these sessions, yes, but sitting at the strategy table and knowing that the diversity of thinking, it's, we did this before, we should do this again. We did that, that didn't work. And this kind of tool gets people out of that pattern.
I also think that it gives them a vehicle. So it's very vulnerable to speak up, especially if you're not a big voice at the table. It's very vulnerable to speak up with a completely different idea or to possibly seem like you don't get it by saying something that's so different. And this almost gives people permission to come up with outlandish views and to come up with new ideas that might be risky to just throw out there as if I've thought it through and it's a good idea. This really invites some vulnerable brainstorming and invites voices at all levels to contribute. And I think sometimes that's really overlooked, is the value of the people who are maybe not in the top, you know, echelon of planning, but are in the the weeds of the business, and they see stuff that other people don't see and maybe don't always have a way of articulating it.
Yep.
So making this sort of a light and fun experience, it also brings in their background. So they're using their experiences in their brain to come up with these new perspectives. And
Yeah.
so I like that it's a vehicle and permission as well. So
yeah, I love it. I love it. Wow. Well, I always wonder what we're going to talk about for a half an hour, and then a half an hour goes by. And I'll just give people a sense of, here was one of the other questions that we didn't talk about, but sort of at the opposite end of, what would a full yes look like? What has been neglected?
Yeah.
And so interesting, these questions. How has this served you? What's the cost of what you're neglecting?
Yeah.
What matters more to you?
Yeah.
So much richness in both the images and the questions that you've put together, Annie. I think it's really a fantastic tool. And as I said, I bought 3 of them. So if you're in a corporate environment and looking for something to use with your team, and if you're, independent, looking for something to work with your clients, it's individualized, it's personalized and self-coaching, but it's also, very big, bold questions that we neglect. That's what's been neglected. We neglect to ask ourselves the hard questions.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fascinating and interesting, right? That's what makes it feel like there's momentum and energy in a business when you're pushing a little bit into the areas that you wouldn't have otherwise.
Exactly. So let's make sure that we give people the opportunity to know how to contact you.
Sure.
So anniekip.com is your website. Annie@anniekip.com. You make it very simple for people to figure out how to get in touch with you.
Yeah.
Most of you know me, so we don't need to focus on this. I just need to see, we've got a comment here. Appreciate the diversity of open-ended images and the potential pointedness of the questions. Yes, absolutely, Carl. I mean, that is so true with all of this.
Thanks.
So Annie, this has been so much fun. I didn't put in the in this slide the coupon for the discount, but again, it's Libby. Probably not case sensitive, I would assume.
No, I think it's all capitals. Libby 20. Yeah.
Okay, Libby 20. I like that. I'm part of a discount.
Yeah, it's 20% off. I mean, this is just an encouragement to try them. This isn't going to be a big thing for me. I just wanted to say thank you to people who are interested in this, and I'm happy to answer questions, and reach out to me on my website. There's a contact form. Feel free to ask questions about this.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Annie, for being here. And thank you, everyone who has been here live. If you've caught this on the replay, thank you for tuning in. Go buy your smart deck. I mean, what's the retail of one of these?
You know what? They're $47. So it's not a novelty deck. It's actually a self-coaching tool. Really a bargain compared to coaching, as you know. But it's not a play deck. This is a serious tool that you will use to, do self-coaching and yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone. We are at the end of our session for this morning. There will not be a session next week, but we'll be back the last Monday of March. I think it's the 27th, with Eric Spencer talking about his book, You, Me, and We, How to Become a Best Friend at Work. So I think that's going to be a fantastic conversation, and a whole bunch of other speakers lined up for April. So stay in touch, stay tuned for more. And thank you again, Annie.
My pleasure. Thank you, Libby.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.